I had just given birth when my 8-year-old daughter, Emma, came to visit me. She quietly closed the curtain and whispered, "Mom, get under the bed." Now we crawled under together, holding our breath. Then, footsteps approached, and she gently covered my mouth. The Thompson family's white, 2-story house stood quietly in the lush suburban neighborhood of Boston. A November morning had arrived, with fallen leaves accumulating in the front yard, signaling the end of autumn and the coming of winter. Sarah stood by the window, resting both hands on her heavily pregnant belly as she took slow, deep breaths. For her, this pregnancy was a miracle after 7 years of fertility treatments, numerous failures, and moments of despair. This baby was conceived just when she had nearly given up hope. Every morning, Sarah offered prayers of gratitude for this precious life. "Mom, look at my science project." Emma's cheerful voice echoed from the living room. Sarah slowly descended the stairs and gazed at the solar system model her 8-year-old daughter proudly displayed. The project, with its accurate planetary placement and proportional sizes, reflected Emma's delicate sensibility and intellectual curiosity. "It's wonderful, Emma. You've really paid attention to every detail," Sarah smiled, gently stroking her daughter's brown curls. Emma looked pleased that her mother had praised her work. She excelled in school, with teachers recognizing her particular talents in science and art. She had a vivid imagination and occasionally surprised people with her mature behavior. "Are you going to show it to Dad? Will he be home late?" At Emma's question, Sarah's expression clouded momentarily. Her husband, David, worked as a sales manager at a medical equipment manufacturer and had become increasingly busy lately. He traveled frequently, spending less and less time at home. "Dad said he has an important meeting with clients, so he'll be late today. But you can definitely show him tomorrow morning," Sarah spoke gently to her daughter. Those small worries swirled inside her. David had been noticeably tired lately, with family conversations becoming less frequent. He seemed genuinely happy about the birth of their second child, but there was something unsettled about him that concerned her. Sarah herself had worked for years as a library curator, but had taken leave on her doctor's orders after entering the late stages of pregnancy. Being forced to rest at home was difficult for her active nature, but safely delivering the baby was her top priority. In the afternoon, Sarah prepared a light dinner for Emma while reviewing her pre-birth checklist. 1 week until her due date, the hospital bag was almost ready, and the newborn clothes were washed and folded. They had already decided on the name William, after David's father. The sound of the front door opening was followed by the patter of Emma's feet rushing to greet someone. It seemed David had unexpectedly returned home early. "Dad, look at my solar system." Emma's excited voice was followed by David's tired laugh. "That's amazing, Emma. You really have talent." Sarah emerged from the kitchen to welcome her husband. David's face showed signs of fatigue. His tie was loosened, and his shirt collar was wrinkled. He approached his wife, smiling at her large belly, and gave her a light kiss. The meeting ended earlier than expected. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine. My back hurts a little, but the doctor says that's normal." That night, after Emma had gone to bed, the couple relaxed in the living room, watching television. David put his arm around Sarah's shoulder and buried his face in her hair. "Sarah, I'm truly happy I met you." Sarah was slightly surprised by this sudden sentimental remark. David then began discussing plans for after the birth. His parents lived far away and would have difficulty visiting right after the delivery, and Sarah's parents couldn't travel long distances due to health reasons. They concluded that their friend, Laura, would be their most reliable support. Late that night, Sarah suddenly woke to intense pain. Labor had begun a full week before her due date. David was scheduled to leave for a 2-day business trip the next morning, but quickly began preparing. "I'll call Laura," Sarah said, fighting through the pain. "You should go on your trip. This might take a while." David looked hesitant, but eventually agreed to Sarah's suggestion. Laura arrived promptly and would take Sarah to the hospital. Before leaving, Emma, with half-sleepy eyes, said in a small voice, "Mum, Dad, please come back soon with the baby." By the time they reached the hospital, the contractions were coming closer together. The delivery seemed to be progressing faster than expected. Laura contacted the hospital and informed David of the situation. After intense pain and a long labor, Sarah gave birth to a healthy boy, William Thompson. The tiny life breathed quietly in her exhausted arms. A day after giving birth, Sarah lay quietly in her hospital bed. Postpartum fatigue and pain still lingered throughout her body, but the presence of little William sleeping in the bassinet beside her provided comfort. Morning light streamed through the window, announcing the start of a new day. The door was knocked on, and David entered with a bouquet of flowers. He had returned immediately from his business trip, after receiving news of the birth, and rushed to his wife and son. "Sarah, you did so well. He's perfect." David gently picked up William and gazed at him in admiration. However, Sarah sensed something odd about David's behavior. He seemed happy about his son but appeared restless, occasionally glancing toward the hallway. "Is something bothering you?" When Sarah asked, David hastily shook his head. "No, nothing. I'm just waiting for a call from the office. They're still contacting me despite the situation. I'm sorry." His explanation was reasonable, but Sarah's intuition told her otherwise. Their conversation was interrupted by a nurse entering the room. She wore a name tag that read Emily and began checking on Sarah's condition with a bright smile. "How are you feeling this morning, Miss S. Thompson? Has the pain subsided?" Emily checked Sarah's blood pressure, giving David a friendly smile. David merely nodded briefly to her before quickly averting his eyes. "It's a little better, thank you," Sarah replied. Emily checked the thought and handed Sarah a pill. "This is a painkiller prescribed by the doctor. Please take it with water." After Sarah took the medication, Emily nodded with satisfaction, made some notes, and left the room. David followed, saying he needed to make a work call. Alone, Sarah was suddenly overcome with intense drowsiness. The painkiller seemed too strong. She tried to resist, but her eyelids grew heavy, and soon she fell into a deep sleep. When she awoke, a different nurse was in the room holding William. "Oh, you're awake. The baby was hungry, so I've been holding him." Sarah looked at the clock. It was past noon. She had slept for 4 hours. A normal painkiller shouldn't have made her sleep so long. "The medication seems to have had a strong effect on me," Sarah said, her head still foggy. "Yes," Emily noted that in your chart. "We'll adjust the dosage next time," the nurse said, handing the baby to Sarah. That afternoon, Sarah felt another change in her condition, sudden nausea and heart palpitations. She pressed the nurse call button, and Emily appeared immediately. "What's wrong?" "I feel sick, and my heart is beating fast." Emily took her blood pressure again and placed a hand on her forehead. "You might have a slight fever. Temporary fevers after childbirth aren't uncommon. I'll adjust the medication in your IV." She changed the IV bag and made another note about Sarah's condition. As Emily left the room, Sarah saw her take out a mobile phone and send a message to someone. In the evening, Laura brought Emma to visit. Emma's eyes sparkled when she first saw her little brother. "Mom, William is so tiny." Sarah gently embraced her daughter and kissed her hair. "Yes, he is, but he'll grow bigger and bigger. I hope he becomes as smart as you." Laura looked at Sarah with concern. "You look pale. Are you all right?" Sarah told her about the changes in her condition and how the medication seemed too strong. Laura frowned. "That's strange. Shouldn't you talk to your doctor about it?" Just then, Emily entered the room again. She showed an overly friendly attitude toward Emma. "Oh, you must be Emma. I've heard so much about you from your mother. What a smart girl you are." Sarah was confused. She had never mentioned Emma to Emily. Emma herself clearly felt uncomfortable and moved closer to her mother. "I don't know this nurse," Emma whispered to Sarah. Emily, seeming not to notice, said, "It's medication time," and offered another pill. Sarah eyed the pill suspiciously, but didn't want to cause a scene in front of Laura and Emma. She took the pill and waited for Emily to leave. "Laura, don't you think there's something strange about that nurse?" Laura agreed. Yes, it was unnatural that she knew Emma's name. Emma left the room briefly, saying she wanted to get some water. When she returned, her expression was dark, as if she wanted to say something. When Laura excused herself to buy some food from the cafeteria, leaving Sarah and Emma alone, Emma approached her mother's bed and said in a low voice, "Mom, I've seen that nurse before with Dad." Sarah's heart jumped. "What do you mean?" 2 weeks ago, Dad picked me up from school and took me for ice cream. I saw Dad and that woman talking at an outside table. They both looked serious." Sarah was speechless. David had said he would be working late that day. Emma had no reason to lie. That evening, after David's brief visit, Sarah heard him leave the room. However, he didn't immediately walk away down the hallway. Instead, she heard David talking quietly with someone in the corridor. She couldn't make out what was said, but it was definitely a woman's voice. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Anxiety and doubt occupied her mind. The next morning, Sarah gazed at the sunlight streaming through the window, nursing her restless thoughts. She had awakened several times during the night and hadn't slept well. In the bassinet next to her, William breathed peacefully. Feeling the fragility and preciousness of this small life, Sarah reflected on what Emma had told her yesterday. "I saw Dad with that nurse." Suspicions about David were eating away at her heart. She had sensed changes in his attitude before the birth, but she never imagined he might be involved with another woman, especially one who was her nurse. Sarah felt a headache coming on. The morning vital check was performed by a different nurse. She explained that Emily would be on duty in the afternoon and check Sarah's condition before leaving, though the fourth was still running, but the painkiller dosage seemed to have been reduced, as Sarah's head felt clearer. In the morning, Sarah received a visit from her attending physician. The doctor seemed satisfied with her recovery but was concerned about the fever and nausea. "Let's do another blood test just to be safe." After the doctor left, Sarah picked up her mobile phone and hesitantly called David. He answered after the third ring. "Sarah, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" "No, I'm fine." Sarah tried to sound calm. "I just wanted to know if you could come with Emma when she visits today." On the other end of the line, David could be heard taking a sharp breath. "That's difficult today. I have an important meeting." "I understand." Sarah couldn't hide her disappointment. "Talk to you later then." After hanging up, Sarah sank deep into her bed, staring at the ceiling. Was her intuition correct, or was this paranoia due to her postpartum mental state? At lunchtime, Emily appeared. She acted as cheerfully as ever, but Sarah noticed that her eyes weren't smiling. Emily brought the meal and another pill. "This is an additional antibiotic prescribed by the doctor. It's to prevent infection." Sarah stared at the pill. She hadn't heard the doctor give such instructions during the morning rounds. "Did my doctor say this?" Emily hesitated for a moment. "Yes, of course. It's recorded in your chart." Sarah took the pill in her hand but didn't swallow it. "I'll take it later. I want to eat first." Emily briefly showed a dissatisfied expression but quickly composed herself. "All right, I'll check back later." After Emily left, Sarah hid the pill in the bedside table drawer. Her feeling that something was wrong was growing stronger. Around 2:00 in the afternoon, Laura brought Emma. Emma clutched a small bouquet and rushed to her mother. Sarah embraced her daughter tightly. "Mom, are you okay?" Emma looked up at her mother's face with concern. "Yes, I'm fine." Sarah smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Laura picked up William and, while rocking him, said, "Sarah, I'm going to buy some drinks." "What would you like, Emma?" "Apple juice," Emma answered enthusiastically. When Laura left the room, Emma's expression changed. She moved closer to her mother's bed and said in a low voice, "Mom, I saw that nurse again today. She was talking with Dad in the hallway." Sarah's heart began to race. "When?" "Just now, when we arrived at the hospital. They didn't notice us." Emma's eyes reflected fear. "Mom." She had a scary face. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "Emma, what do you mean?" Emma moved even closer to her mother and said in an almost inaudible voice, "She told Dad, we'll do it today." Dad said, "Not yet." "Mom, is she going to do something?" Sarah caught her breath. Children's intuition is sharp. Emma had sensed something Sarah herself had felt. Something unnatural about Emily's behavior, the overly strong effect of the medicine, knowing Emma's name, and this morning's suspicious antibiotic. Suddenly, voices could be heard from the hallway. Emma quickly stood up and listened toward the window. Then, with a determined expression, she quietly began to draw the curtains in the hospital room. "Emma, what are you doing?" Without turning around, Emma said, "Mom, she's coming." After closing the curtains, Emma rushed to her mother's bed and, with a small but serious expression, said, "Mom, get under the bed right now." Sarah sensed her daughter's urgency and fear. Emma's eyes held a wisdom and determination beyond her years. Sarah acted without hesitation. She gently picked up William and, dragging the fourth stand with her, stood beside the bed. "Emma, you come too." She first knelt on the floor and, still holding the baby, carefully slid under the bed. Her postpartum body still felt pain, but she ignored it. Emma quickly crawled in beside her mother. As the two held their breath under the bed, they heard the hospital room door open. Quiet footsteps approached. Sarah gently rocked William to prevent him from crying while holding her breath. Emma clung to her mother's arm, trembling with fear. The footsteps stopped near the bed. There was a sound of someone touching the pillow on the bed. "Where did she go?" a woman's voice muttered. It was Emily. Sarah's heart pounded violently. She suddenly felt Emma's small hand cover her mouth. Emma was warning her mother to stay quiet. "Smart girl." Sarah nodded slightly and gently squeezed Emma's hand. Emily seemed to have pressed the nurse call button. "The patient is missing," they heard her say. Just then, another set of footsteps entered the room, heavier ones belonging to a man. "What are you doing? Where's Sarah?" It was David's voice. Emily's voice came back, low and dangerously resonant. "Your obstacle will soon be gone with just one injection." "What are you talking about?" David's voice was disturbed. "We planned this, David. You and me and the baby. We don't need your wife." Emily's voice had a tinge of madness. "The baby will be ours." Sarah was frozen with terror. In her arms, William began to stir. Sarah kissed the baby even more gently, praying he would stay quiet. Emma's face was pale, her eyes filled with fear, but she bravely remained still, trying to protect her mother and brother. From under the bed, Sarah could see Emily's white nursing shoes and David's leather shoes. They were standing face to face. David's feet stepped backward. "What are you saying?" "I only said I wanted to break up. I don't intend to hurt anyone." A ray of light shone in Sarah's heart. While David had certainly been having an affair with Emily, he didn't seem to be participating in this crazed plan. However, that hardly changed the current situation. Emily had a syringe with a lethal dose of drugs, and she was looking for Sarah. "You promised. You said we would be together." Emily's voice trembled with anger. Sarah looked at Emma's face. Along with fear, there was determination in her daughter's eyes. Emma gently pointed to her mother's arm, showing the watch-like nurse call button attached to it. Sarah understood and nodded slightly. It was a race against time. From their limited view under the bed, they could see Emily's and David's feet still facing each other. "You promised me a future together." Emily's voice was growing louder. "If she were gone, we could be a perfect family." "Are you crazy?" David's voice shook with anger. "I only said I wanted to end our affair. I never talked about hurting Sarah or Emma or the baby." Under the bed, Sarah stiffened at hearing her name. Beside her, Emma silently wept. Sarah gently embraced her daughter, trying to encourage her. William remained with his eyes closed, barely breathing. "Break up? Break up with me?" Emily's voice turned cold and sharp. "Didn't you tell me things weren't going well with your wife? That you didn't want a second child?" "I did say that, but it was from pre-birth anxiety. The moment I saw William, my thinking changed." David's voice had regained its composure. "Emily, calm down. Nothing irreversible has happened yet. Put down that syringe, and let's talk." Sarah had complex feelings about her husband's words. She couldn't forgive his infidelity, but at least now he was trying to protect his family. Emily's foot stepped forward. "It's too late, David. I've planned everything. Sarah's illness, the overdose of medication. It's all my doing. I've prepared it so no one will question if she dies from complications." David could be heard gasping. Are you sane? Love sometimes drives people mad." Emily's voice had regained a strange calmness. "If you love me, you should understand this is for our future." Sarah felt the blood in her body freeze. Emily was completely insane, and she was desperately thinking of a way to escape this situation. She had pressed the nurse call button, but how long would it take for hospital staff to arrive? "Emily, you're sick. You need help." David's feet stepped backward. "I will never allow you to hurt Sarah." "So," Emily's voice echoed coldly, "you're an obstacle too." Footsteps moved, and it seemed a struggle had begun between them. Sarah couldn't see what was happening, but she heard something fall to the floor. David let out a pained sound. "Emily, stop." Emma's hand gripped Sarah's arm tightly. Sarah sensed her daughter's terror. She was trembling with fear herself, but had to appear strong in front of Emma. Just then, the hospital room door was flung open. "Is everything all right?" The nurse called. Another nurse's voice could be heard. Then, a moment of silence, followed by a surprised voice. "Emily, what are you doing? Don't interfere," Emily shouted. "Security, come quickly," the nurse called out into the hallway. Amid the confusion, multiple footsteps entered the room. Sarah held Emma tightly and protected William. "She has a syringe," someone shouted. After some commotion, the room suddenly fell silent. "It's safe. We've restrained her," a man's voice announced. Sarah took a deep breath and made a decision. "Emma, it's okay now. Let's come out." She slowly crawled out from under the bed, holding William in her arms and leading Emma by the hand. She stood up, met by the surprised expressions of everyone in the room. There were 2 nurses, 2 security staff, and David in the room. David's face had scratch marks, and his shirt was disheveled. Emily was being restrained by security, struggling wildly. A syringe had fallen to the floor from her hand. David was stunned. Under the bed, "I hid with Mom," Emma said in a small voice. I was scared of that woman. Seeing the two of them, Emily began struggling more violently. You ruined everything. We could have been happy. Security firmly restrained her and removed her from the room. The hospital administrator was called, and the institution was in an uproar over the gravity of the situation. Sarah, Emma, and William were moved to another room. The police were called, and the syringe Emily had been carrying was collected as evidence. Emergency tests showed the contents of the syringe were a lethal dose of morphine. The hospital's medical safety manager explained to Sarah, Emily Collins was hired by our hospital 2 months ago, but we've discovered she falsified her credentials. She apparently has a history of psychiatric hospitalization and caused similar problems at another hospital. Stroking Emma's hair with trembling hands, Sarah asked, "But why was I targeted?" According to the police's initial investigation, Collins had a brief relationship with your husband and gathered information about you and your family in the process, the manager explained apologetically. She arranged to be assigned to you and was targeting your delivery. David stood outside Sarah's new hospital room door, his face showing deep regret and shame. Sarah saw him but said nothing. "Let me talk to you." David entered the room. "I'll explain everything." "Emma, could you wait outside for a bit?" Sarah said gently to her daughter. Emma looked anxiously at her mother but nodded and left the room. "I met Emily 3 months ago," David began in a heavy tone. "It was just a temporary mistake. I tried to end it a month ago, but she wouldn't accept it. However, I never thought she was this deranged. I can't believe it." Sarah's voice was cold. "Your reckless behavior put our lives in danger." "I know. I don't expect to be forgiven." David bowed his head. "But for Emma and William's sake, please let me try again." Sarah gazed out the window. Her heart was filled with the pain of betrayal, but at the same time, she felt deep gratitude that their lives had been saved by Emma's courage and quick thinking. "I need time to think," she finally said. "Right now, I just want to focus on the children." David nodded silently and left the room. 3 months later, Sarah sat on the small porch of her new home, watching Emma play in the garden. Baby William slept peacefully in her arms. The new house was smaller than their previous one, but the warm sunshine and quiet environment, surrounded by greenery, were ideal for healing their wounded hearts. Emily Collins had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and delusional disorder following a psychiatric evaluation and was confined to a state facility. Police investigations revealed that she had greatly exaggerated her brief relationship with David, even fantasizing about marriage and family planning. More surprisingly, she had caused similar problems at hospitals where she had previously worked, but had concealed her record through credential falsification. "Mom, look, a butterfly," Emma called from the garden, stretching her small arms toward the sky. Sarah smiled. Emma was receiving psychological counseling twice a week, but was gradually regaining her original brightness with the resilience typical of children. Though occasional anxious expressions remained, she had developed pride in being a little hero. The divorce proceedings with David had been completed last month. He had quit his job and moved to a city on the West Coast. Child support was paid regularly, but he didn't come to see William. It was arranged that he would talk to Emma once a month by phone with the help of a lawyer. Sarah had successfully obtained sole custody of the children through Laura's introduction. Sarah had started working 3 days a week at the local library. The limited working hours gave her plenty of time to spend with her children and an opportunity to build relationships in the new community. The library's storytelling sessions had become her small joy. "Would you like some tea?" Laura appeared from the back door, holding 2 mugs. Since the incident, she had become Sarah's strong supporter, often visiting on weekends to help with housework and childcare. "Thank you," Sarah accepted the mug. "I couldn't have recovered without you." "Don't say that." Laura sat beside her. "You're stronger than you think, and so is Emma." Sarah gazed at her daughter running around in the garden. She was truly brave. "She saved our lives." Life is unpredictable and sometimes cruel. Sarah thought about the true meaning of family while contemplating this. It's not just about blood ties, but about bonds where people protect and trust each other. Through their great ordeal, a stronger bond had formed between her, Emma, and William than before. "Mum." Emma came running up. "Is William awake? Can I hold him?" Sarah smiled and handed the small baby to her daughter. Emma carefully held her brother and gently kissed his forehead. "I'll always protect you," Emma whispered to her brother. As Sarah watched her 2 children, She felt hopeful about their future journey together, despite the uncertainties of the road ahead.